Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and today I'm going to be sharing a short story I wrote called The Light. And as I mentioned last week, this story has a more serious tone compared to the story I shared last week, which was Fairy Tale Reimagined. This one just kind of has more emotional subject matter. And I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and then afterwards I'll share a little bit more about it, but I don't want to spoil anything. So here we go. Without further ado, it's story time. A small lamp sits on an end table in the living room, casting a warm orange glow, a modest, seemingly insignificant light. A pair of small eyes stares up at the lamp, admiring its quaint beauty. The pretty colors of the lampshade are made of stained glass with pictures of flowers that curve into melting pink, red, and yellow petals with vivid green stems. "Mom, do you want me to turn this light off?" the young girl's mom asks as she crosses into the living room, bundled up in her fuzzy coat and her winter accessories, mittens and a matching wool hat and scarf. She scoops up the wire to switch off the lamp, until her mom, the young girl's grandmother, lays a wrinkled hand on top of hers. "We leave it on until Grandpa comes home," her grandma says, a gentle reminder. Mom blinks in confusion, a fleeting moment in which she truly doesn't understand, but then the worrisome look fades with a placating smile as she releases the wire. "You and your superstitions," Mom says. She delivers a kiss to Grandma's cheek, while Grandma's thin arms wrap around Mom in a loving hug. After she lets go, Grandma looks down at the little girl, who's been silently observing the exchange with her wondrous green eyes, thumb in her mouth and finger curled around a long strand of chestnut brown hair. Grandma's smile brightens as she leans down and kisses the top of her granddaughter's head. The young girl's cheek turned up around her thumb clamped down between her lips. She removes her thumb with a soft pop and lifts both her arms for a hug. Grandma crouches down to the girl's level and wraps her arms around her. The girl inhales the scent of her grandma's white sweater, a touch of lavender fabric softener combined with the ashy smell of cigarette smoke. "Love you, Grandma," the little girl says. "I love you too, sweetie," Grandma replies. Her mother smiles warmly at the embrace. When they release, Mom offers her hand, which the little girl takes, small fingers clasping around her mom's soft mitten. They depart, and after the little girl is safely fastened in her car seat and her mom starts the car, the little girl looks out the car window to see Grandma looking out at them from her window. She blows a kiss and waves. The little girl beams and does the same. She doesn't like coming to the hospital. People rush in and out of rooms, looking distressed. Nurses in scrubs hurriedly walk through the halls carrying various medical supplies. Mom always looks worried when she's here. She can see the crinkles in her forehead as she guides the little girl down the hallway, her high-heeled shoes tapping briskly against the hard floor in an endless click-click-click. When they finally walk into Grandpa's room, Grandma's already there, by his bedside, looking calm but worn out. The light in her dark brown eyes is a little dimmer, and the usual warm smile on her face is absent. Mom and Grandma speak in hushed tones. There's a lot of head shaking and shrugs and frowns. Sometimes they'll look at the little girl, whose eyes up until then have been bouncing back and forth between the two of them. They'll each offer her a weak smile, and she'll only stand there, unable to smile back because she knows it's not real. Mom eventually scoops her up in her arms and brings her closer to Grandpa. He's asleep, and he looks pale, with tubes coming out of his nose. It makes her sad. A lump swells in her throat, hard and dry, and tears rush to her eyes. She buries her face into her mother's neck. "It's okay, honey," her mom says in a gentle tone. "Grandpa will get better." She says that a lot. She's not sure how much time goes by, but to her it feels like an eternity. Leaves fall off the trees. Nights grow longer. Days grow colder. A chill fills the air. Snow begins to fall. Christmas lights are draped around the store windows. It's all a whirlwind of colors, dazzling in the reflections of the car window where the little girl rests her head, shivering, despite the fact that the heat is cranked high as Mom drives home after another hospital visit, her hands clenched around the steering wheel, knuckles white. "Mommy, you should put on your mittens," the little girl says. Her mother looks at her through the rearview mirror. Eyes once pierced with worry now grow soft as she says, "Thank you, baby, Mommy will." And she does. Once she reaches the red light, the little girl brightens, happy that her mom is a little bit comfier. Winter passes, snow thaws, leaves grow back on the trees, flowers bloom, spring is here. Mommy's mood is a lot happier nowadays. She hums to herself as she tidies up the house while the little girl sits and colors at her bright red and yellow plastic table that reminds her of snack time at school. Suddenly the little girl erupts into a fit of giggles as she feels an onslaught of fingertips dancing across her back. She writhes and drops her crayon, squealing with glee. She stops to catch her breath, and her mom plants a big wet kiss on her cheek. Alight with joy, she tells the little girl, "Grandpa's coming home today." Now Mom laughs and the little girl jumps up and dances around to celebrate. Grandma's house feels lighter, airier. Grandpa sits in his favorite chair, his arms outstretched as Grandma places a steaming mug of coffee into his hand. The color in his cheeks is back, a healthy rosy glow, and his once lifeless eyes are now shining once more. Mom fluffs a pillow behind his back and places a kiss on his temple. He smiles at her as he takes a delicate sip of his coffee. The little girl can't help but avert her eyes to the lamp, which still burns brightly. It's so pretty she has to touch it. Rushing up to the dark brown table, she lifts her hand towards it and grabs the black cord. She pulls on it and the lamp skids closer. Her heart beats with excitement, but the noise catches the attention of her mother, who rushes over and gently pulls the little girl's hand off the cord. "Careful, honey," she says as she slides the lamp back. "Mom, I guess we could turn this light off now, right?" "Sure, sweetie," Grandma says, "although your father still has a long way to go until he's completely healthy." "I am healthy," Grandpa says. The soft click of the light switch is drowned out as he coughs hard. Mom rushes back and takes his coffee mug while Grandma rubs his back. The little girl blinks in alarm and waits as Grandpa gradually stops coughing. She casts her eyes back up to the lamp, now dull and ordinary without its burning light. The school year comes to an end. The sun shines brighter, the days grow hotter. Summertime. Mom and Grandma and Grandpa spend lots of days outside now. Today they're out for a walk. The little girl holds Mom's hand and watches a butterfly fluttering by, while Grandma and Grandpa linger behind. Grandma's arm guides Grandpa as he slowly walks. He insists he can walk on his own, but she never draws away. At one point, Grandma starts to cough. "Just a cold," she says when Mom asks if she's okay. The days grow longer. The little girl sits outside, drawing a unicorn on the sidewalk while Grandpa watches her from the window. She scrapes the pink chalk in her hand back and forth to color in the big, pointy horn until the chalk is nothing but a small stub. She beams proudly at her creation and races up the porch steps to Grandma and Grandpa's house. She pushes open the door and says, "Come see my picture." Her mom flits about the room on the phone. "Yes, please hurry," she says in urgency. "Dad, will you take her back outside?" The little girl stands there, her smile long gone, a sense of dread taking over. But then Grandpa strolls over and extends a shaky hand. "Let's go see that picture," he says. The two of them head out the door, hand in hand, though the unsettling feeling in the little girl's stomach only grows stronger, fluttering about wildly, like a butterfly. Summer ends. Nights grow shorter. Soon is the start of fall. She's entering kindergarten now. Her mom dresses her in a pretty yellow dress with a matching yellow bow in her hair. The little girl clasps her hands together and swings them in front of her waist. She flashes a toothy smile and her mom snaps a picture. Her mom smiles back at her, but doesn't quite reach her eyes. The little girl doesn't like seeing her mommy sad. She flings her arms around her and covers her face in kisses to make her feel better. More time passes. School goes well. The girl has started making lots of new friends. She recounts the days to her mom, telling her all about show and tell. "I showed everyone my picture," the little girl says, holding it up for Mom to see. Her mom's smile drops as she looks at the drawing. 4 smiling faces, a man and woman with gray hair, a tall woman with blonde hair, and a little girl with pigtails. "It's you and me and Grandma and Grandpa." "It's beautiful," Mom says. "I want to show it to Grandma and Grandpa," the little girl says. Her mother hesitates. "Grandma isn't feeling well, honey," she says, and she looks at the drawing again. "But I'm going to put this up on the fridge so everyone can see it." And as promised, it goes right up on the fridge with a magnet shaped like the sun. The red smiles on each drawn face look happy as ever. One morning, Mommy gets a call. Her voice fills the still air in the wee hours of the morning, rousing the little girl from her sleep. She sleepily walks out of the room in her princess nightgown, only to stop and hover outside the doorway to her mom's bedroom. "Okay," her mom says over and over. Okay. I'll be there soon. Bye, Dad." She hangs up and freezes when she makes eye contact with her little girl, tears gleaming in her eyes. She walks up to the girl and crouches down to her level, and the little girl waits for her mommy to speak. "Grandma's gone to heaven." The little girl immediately breaks. Her mother envelops her in a hug, and they cry together. It's a gloomy morning, fog lining the lush green of the cemetery. Everyone's dressed in black. Mom's face is solemn. The little girl mirrors her expression. They hold hands. The little girl's fingers cling tightly around her mother's limp fingers. After the service, Grandpa lingers, standing like a statue, gray-faced and lifeless, tears dancing in his eyes. Later that night, after Mom has finished tidying up Grandma and Grandpa's kitchen, she scoops up the little girl, whose head slumps against her mother's shoulder, exhausted after such an emotionally draining day. "I'll talk to you tomorrow," Mom says. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetie," he says. "Thanks for everything." She gives him a kiss on the cheek. The little girl feels a warm hand on her back and a kiss on the top of her head from Grandpa. There's a pause, and the last thing she hears before drifting off to sleep is the soft click of the lamp switch as Mom turns back on the light. Alright, so that was The Light. This was actually inspired by my grandma, who did the same thing. When my grandpa was in the hospital years ago, she had a lamp that she wouldn't turn off until he came home, and she used to say that too. "We don't turn it off until Grandpa comes home," which is really cute. He did end up getting better and everything, so I gotta say, to quote the great Michael Scott, I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. A couple other things I wanted to say about this story. First, I know I didn't actually name the characters, and compared to my other story last week, I didn't name those characters either. That's kind of just a coincidence, though I do usually name my characters, but in this case specifically, the reason I didn't give them any names was because I just wanted to have it as like a generic mom, grandma, little girl. Like, it's just like that's their role. They don't necessarily need names, so that was intentional. The other thing I wanted to say was I realize it's kind of abrupt when, like, the grandma coughs and then a few scenes later, oh, grandma's dead, honey. I realize that's kind of, unrealistic in a sense. Like, it's kind of gets glossed over, the death. But the reason I did that was because this is told from the perspective of the little girl. And usually, in general, children are, like, kept in the dark with these kinds of things. So I just, in my head anyway, like, the grandmother just fell into ill health and just quickly declined, and she was just kept in the dark about it until she passed. So again, it was intentional. And that's going to conclude this episode of Storytelling Saga. You can listen to Storytelling Saga on Apple Podcasts or on podcast.com. Be sure to follow Storytelling Saga on Facebook at Storytelling Saga or on Twitter at Storytell Saga. You can also send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by leaving a message in the contact section at storytellingsaga.com or by sending me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, and in that moment, I swear we were infinite, I'll be discussing the perks of being a wallflower. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.